in a minute. Came out of here. And this is the size, and what I did was took it, made a copy on the copier, and then I took it to Norman Wade's, and they blew it up into this. And this is what you need to do the basic small frame of a boat, is this picture here. Like, I should have all of these lines you see going down this way are these numbers here. They're where your frames fit. So, first of all, I take this piece here, and there's different ways, people have different ways of doing it. I'll cover 2 or 3 different ways, 2 ways of doing it. I take this and I make a copy of that on a computer, because everything in here is to the proper scale. This is scaled to this. So I copy that, then I go over to Staples and I get them to make a transparency for me. And if I have 2, if you turn the mirror image of one side backwards, you end up with all your back frames, and then you do another one and you end up with all your forward frames. Now, once you have that, you got to count out your number of frames, and you make 12 copies or 10 copies, however many frames you have, right? Then you take each one of these, and with a pair of scissors, you cut out each shape. That's why you need the copies. You cut each one out, and I trace them on this one. If I was doing them again, I'd just take a little glue, water it down, and glue them right to the board. Then you go to your bandsaw or your scroll saw, and you cut the shape out. And if you look at these lines here, are on here, across here, and if you look at, these are the same lines here. So when you go to fit these into the slots, it shows you where that's going to stop. At that point, right along through, right? So these lines and these, like I said, this is where a certain frame goes. This is where you come from the back through, from here. This is where each frame goes through to the front. And you just slot them in. Then you have this, then you're gonna, the big thing is when you're gluing them together, you gotta make sure center's on center, this way. Everybody's done this here anyways, except people are just starting to build boats. And you gotta make sure that these lines, this may have to go a little deeper, match up with the particular line here. And they go on the mark this way. What I would do is, this part here, I'd make 2 copies. And I'd cut out this and glue it to the board. Then cut it out with the bandsaw. And you cut out like this. The dog got at this, so you'll see that it's chewed up. But this you would glue to the board. Then you cut it out. Then all your lines are on it. These lines are all still here. You take each one of these after you cut them out, glue them to the board, cut them out. You cut them proud by maybe 1/16 of an inch or a little less. Then you go to the sander and you sand to your line. And once the thing you got to do when you start gluing them up is you got to make sure that center is center of this, and it's right angles to this board here. And the next time I talk, you put stiffeners in here, right, to keep everything straight and square. It helps you. Like you go to this model, again here, I've taken this and I've drawn the other side on it. And then you can see where I'd say I'd take a board 1/4 by 1/4 inch, right? And I'd measure from my center here to that mark on each frame. Then I transfer it onto here and cut a notch into this. Then you just slot that 1/4 inch board and you go from this back, the 3rd frame from the end, the 4th frame, you bring one right up to, again, 4 frames from the end. That would cover, if you're gonna make this say a motorized boat, you gotta keep the center clear, because that's where you're gonna have the access to the inside of the boat, right? So you'd put one there and then you go to this end, move over a couple, it'd join up with this end and it'd go back to the back again. So you'd slot these ones out a certain distance, all the same, because once, if they're all the same measurement off center, when you put that in, everything locks up tight. And then you're ready for planking. Once you get everything locked up and planked, then you've got to take a batten, which is just a piece of 16th inch thick wood, and you lay it on this. And when you lay it along here, what you're going to see is that it touches this edge, but it doesn't touch the inside edge. You've got to fair this whole thing down so that it's the same line as the boat. Then your planks would go on. I don't want to get too deep into the planking because John's given the talk, maybe he'll do it again, but when you plank, you have to measure from here to here. Then you'll measure from here to here. This distance is going to be different from this one to this one because it's wider than this one to this one. Same as in the front. So you take a measurement along, you might do every line, every second line. Then you take your plank length that you were going to lay down, and you calculate how many planks you're going to do from here to here. Well, you're going to have the same number of planks here, so they're going to have to be tapered. So by measuring from the top of the plank, this plank will be thicker, full width here, say 1/4 inch wide, and it may only be a 1/16 of an inch wide by the time it gets up here. And it may be 3/16 or probably less when it gets down to here. In here, you're probably better off making the front end from here, or even from here forward, solid, and then just cut it to shape. And your planks would go from here back to here. Same thing. Well, you got to leave room for your keel here to go up through. So I snap this off. This end piece here would be from here out, and because it's going to be really rounded both ways, you're better off making it solid and carving it to shape. And then plank from here forward. But
that would be unless you're good at steaming, eh, Pat? Some people like to steam stuff like that.
Well, yeah, you could steam them, but I think I've done a blue nose in which I ran the planks full length, but this is, it's a way easier to make this solid. Your keel's back here. I mean, your rudder's back here, not your keel. So you don't have to worry about having room for the mechanism of your rudder. It's from here forward. You might even be able to steal a little bit to this side where this one is. It's still not where your rudder is. Your rudder and your mechanism for turning it is down here. You look at the plan, it's two back. This is stuff you'd all map out when you did it. You look at the plan, your rudder's 2 frames back. So as long as that's clear and there's enough room in there for you, your rudder will turn. If you're doing a static model, it doesn't matter. You're not going to, if you're doing a motorized model, see where this black line is, that's all going to get cut out, right? Because you've got to have the room to put the parts inside. If you're doing a static model, that's what you'll work with right there. It's the same as this piece. On every model, you're going to cut out to this line to create room inside to put all your wiring, all your guts of the boat. Motors, wiring,
Guts is good.
Batteries and everything.
everything.
Yeah, you can turn those bulkheads right into rib-style frames.
Yeah, you could if you wanted to.
Sure.
This kind of plywood, I wouldn't do it. This is something I found around the house, so I just used cupboards. But, yeah. But then, once you get to this stage, from this stage up, it's, as I said, you'd brace it, and you gotta remember one thing, straight and square, because if these are twisted, the finished product's gonna be when you glue these, you gotta make sure that it's square in there, and all you gotta do is have a little piece of square plywood you can stick in between them and glue 2 at a time, and just keep coming. As long as it's square to this, centered this way, and once it's rigid, and once you put the things in, but square and straight and at the right depths. These lines on here line up with these lines here. And that's it. Any questions?
Do you allow for the thickness of the planking at all?
Only if you're anal.
Thank you.
If you're building to scale model,
Yeah,
and then yes, people will allow for the thickness of the planking, but if you're just building a model for
No.
remote control
No,
or
it's scale.
something that, like there's only, unless you're selling $20,000, $30,000 models, even this is not going to be to scale because you'll get distortion when you blow it up, but you'll never see it.
and the front formers have to be tapered on the edges too, because the planks go around. They're not square to the former. You see what I'm saying? Know what I'm
I mean,
saying?
like this.
Yeah, they're square back there, but on the front, you have to taper the edge of the former
Well,
instead of
what
being
Underneath
square.
the stem, yeah.
What you
Yeah,
should do
as you get closer to
is-
the stems.
you should cut a notch into
Yeah.
here,
Yeah,
all the ways, this line here, like this
Mhm.
is sitting a little low. Along this line, there's a notch, so the planks come into that notch.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And this here, 3/4 of the time, it's easier to take this piece right off
Right off, yeah,
and put a false keel
yeah.
over,
Mhm.
right? But there's all kinds of different ways when you get to there. This is basically how to take this off the plan and get to this stage.
Mhm.
Do you ever have trouble with the copying companies with copyright?
I've never asked them.
Because I have.
Really?
They wouldn't print it. Staples wouldn't print something for me because they said,
50 years.
yeah.
Printed
I've
myself.
never had a problem. The only thing I've ever printed at Staples is this, and I go to Norman Wade or something like that, and like I said,
Yeah, not runways.
you might find some places that
Yeah,
reject it. Staples won't produce this size copy.
No,
And-
no.
And in order to make a boat this big, you've got to blow the plan up to the size you want to build the boat to be. When you take this picture I had, you measure it, and if it's 12 inches long and you want a 36-inch boat, then you just go in and say, I want this 3 times
Yes,
bigger.
that's right.
Because some of those copying
I
places
want you to
won't
blow it
even
up
copy photographs.
300%.
Quick copy will do the larger.
Most of the copy places that I
You
go
have to
to,
go to,
they don't ask at all, because they're in the business of copying.
Yeah.
Staples is not really in the business of copying, they're in the business of doing a business.
yeah.
And they're afraid that they might come down on them because they're doing other things. So if Staples give you a hard time, don't pat.
This is the only thing I
Don't go
got
there.
done at Staples.
There's a good one in Burnside.
Is I went to
Big sheet
Staples and
size
got the
one in
2
Burnside.
transparencies made.
Commercial outfit.
I go to Speedy Print,
That's
never had a
pretty
problem.
Yeah,
Let Pat talk.
yeah.
I'm basically finished if
When
if
you,
anybody has any
When you
questions.
mentioned that part about planking,
Yeah,
now when you use a steel hull vessel, it's different. The planking, it's on a wood hull vessels, it could be on the outside of the plank, and on a steel vessel, it's on the frames with the,
Oh, really?
that's an option if you're really getting down to.
Yeah.
I believe that generally the practice on steel hull vessels is the steel plate is on the outside of the molded line. And the frame's on the
Oh,
inside of the
really?
molded
Yeah.
line.
Oh, okay. On
I think
steel.
that's the point Bill was.
Yeah, it's steel and wood.
Yeah.
Wood, too.
No,
You
wood,
mean it's-
wood in general.
wood is
wood
on the
draw lines,
outside of
but
this
the
line?
The molded line is the outside.
It's the outside of the
In
blanket,
general.
yeah.
With wooden construction, but
Yeah.
you can't take it to the bank every time.
But steel,
Steel construction
steel is on the
is
inside.
always to the inside.
Yeah.
But as I said, like when you're building, you'll never see it, you'll never know. And the only people who will know is someone who tries to check it for scale. And if you get someone who wants scale, they're not gonna accept this anyways because they want it architectural, what's it called, John?
Architecturally correct.
Correct.
No, but I
The
mean,
skeletal structure has to
they
be
want the
correct.
skeletal
They want a
structure,
copy of
not,
the actual ship
not
instead of a
plank on,
model.
this is plank on frame, they want plank on,
Well, Emerald.
No, that's plank on bulkhead.
plank on bulkhead, they
That
want
is, but they want
Admiralty.
plank on frame, you have to make your frames up in
Admiralty is the
multi-sections.
term I was looking
Yeah,
for.
yeah.
They want plank on frame. In other words, you would make every one of these frames and you would have, instead of having 19 frames, you would probably have to make,
Well, for instance, if I
50.
do a blue nose in 1/48 scale, I have 62 double frames in it,
yeah.
because I build it on a timbered keel in a framing jig. That's another application,
Yeah,
another
strong
way
back.
to do it.
Is that
Yeah,
a strong back? They call that
No.
a strong back.
No,
Upside down?
no, it's not upside down,
No,
it's
no.
right side up.
Okay.
It's a frame that's a
It's-
portable building jig.
Yeah,
it's
So
a,
much easier.
yeah, sure it
it's,
is.
it's, if you took the lines of this boat, what it would be is if you took the lines of this boat, you have something that sits on the bottom and keeps it rigid, right here, and then up at this line here, or this line here, you take a cut through and then you measure out every one of these, and you have a flat piece of wood with the curve of the bow in it, and you put a notch where every frame goes. So when you set the frames down in it, everything is bolted up through together in 3 layers, and you set the frames in and they lock in, and when you glue everything, it's already dead square and straight.
You could have, on those drawings, when you look, you got a level keel in that, you wanna call it, and you have a raker keel.
Yeah.
So what you have to use from that drawing, you gotta use the load water line, or your base point for upwards.
Mm-hmm,
And you gotta keep the same distance
yeah,
ratio to each station.
yeah.
But
Each
you're-
bulkhead, which is a station. But
This-
that's no rake a keel in that model, is there, or is it?
No, but this here gives your deck line, where your deck line's gonna be.
Your shear
Yeah, but I'm
And
talking
it's
the
here
load
on
water
this.
line.
There is rake and keel.
And, your water line will be given on this thing. One of these lines is your water
Well, all
line.
those horizontal lines are water lines, except for the load water line, which is L on there.
It's usually marked as
It's usually marked
LWL or
on-
something
yeah.
like that.
Yeah, but they call all those horizontal lines water lines.
Yeah, but one of them is the
So when
actual
you're-
water. There it is, dead water line right here.
Yeah.
This line is DWL. So
Yeah.
this
Yeah,
This
That's your
is
dead water
the
line.
water line
Water
of your
line.
ship. This is where she sits in the water.
Well, that's the
Ballast
basic.
for that.
That's the,
Basically,
that's
you can use that to get your rake a keel. If you
Yeah.
don't use that for a rake a keel, she could be flat, and, well, that's what happened to, what's his name, Ron's that time. He never used the rake a keel, and he kept it level, but he had a rake a keel. So as soon as you found that point out, then it's parallel along with the line.
But
From
this
base.
this is also the line you use when you paint it. And when you go to balance your boat,
Yeah.
you put it in the bathtub.
ballast is-
Once it's painted, then you weight it up so that it sits to this line, the TWL line, true water line.
Okay, thanks very much, Pat. We're running late on time, so we have to wrap it up there. Thank you very much. So next month, Pete Jakewith will be doing a presentation on